I never wanted to go to Houston for that corporate presentation, let's get that straight. If it hadn't been for Betsy pleading with me like it was the most important night of her professional life, I would have been home watching the game in sweatpants with a plate of microwaved wings. But she made it sound serious. This could really put me on the radar, she'd said, brushing my arm the way she does when she's trying to soften a blow. Linda, my boss, she notices who shows up, who supports the team. It's just one night. I need you there. So I showed up. Suited up, shaved, even polished my shoes, which hadn't seen the outside of our closet since Betsy's cousin's wedding. I figured it wouldn't hurt to play the part of the supportive husband. At the time, I still believed that's what I was, her partner. Her person. The event was being held in one of those high-rise hotels downtown, the kind with the revolving doors and chandeliered lobbies where everyone walks like they know exactly where they're going. The elevator ride to the 48th floor felt like an ascent into another universe. When the doors opened, I was hit by the smell of citrus-scented cologne, roasted finger foods, and money. It was the kind of smell you associate with ambition and expensive resumes. Everything about the place screamed, look at me, from the Art Deco lounge furniture to the string quartet playing pop covers like it was a Bridgerton episode. I remember smoothing down my blazer and adjusting my tie in the reflection of a floor-to-ceiling window. I looked like someone trying too hard. Out of place. A guy tagging along in his wife's world. And maybe deep down I already knew something was off. I scanned the room for Betsy. It took a second to find her in the crowd, partly because there were a lot of people and partly because I didn't recognize her at first. She was standing near the bar, framed by two people. One was an older woman with a short bob and a blazer with shoulder pads, probably Linda. The other was a man. Tall. Smug. Holding a coffee cup in a room full of wine glasses. He was wearing a watch I knew cost more than my car. His whole vibe screamed curated success. The kind of guy who drinks espresso at 7 p.m. because he doesn't have to worry about early mornings. He probably wakes up in a condo overlooking the skyline. And Betsy, God. She was radiant in a way that made my stomach twist. She had on a silver suit I'd never seen before, her hair styled in waves instead of her usual messy bun, and makeup done like she was about to film a commercial. Her laugh came too easy, and she tilted her head toward the tall guy like he was the only person worth hearing. She didn't see me right away. Or maybe she did and didn't want to make it obvious. When I finally stepped closer, she glanced at me surprised. Not happy, not even really welcoming, just surprised. Oh, she said, like I was early for something. Hey, that was it? No hug. No kiss on the cheek. No, everyone, this is my husband. She just turned back to them as if I'd interrupted an important moment. I stood there awkwardly waiting for her to follow up with something, anything. But she didn't. I ended up introducing myself to Linda. She smiled politely, said something about being so glad to finally meet the man behind the name, and then immediately turned back to her conversation with Betsy. The guy Sean, as I'd later learn, didn't even acknowledge me. Not a nod, not a nice to meet you, not even eye contact. He kept sipping his coffee and smirking at whatever Betsy was saying as if I was just another employee passing through. I stepped away after a few minutes, pretending I needed a drink. I didn't even care what I grabbed. I just needed to breathe. Standing there with them felt like being in a movie where you suddenly realize you're not one of the main characters anymore. Just someone in the background. And I hated how quickly that feeling sank in. I took my drink and moved toward one of the tall windows overlooking the city. Houston glittered beneath us like a sea of tiny lights sprawling in every direction. From up here, everything looked calm. Perfect. But inside, I felt this strange dissonance. Like I was at a party for someone I used to know. I watched Betsy from across the room. She looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Animated. Leaning in too close when she talked to Sean. Touching his arm when she laughed. Laughing too often. The kind of laughter that wasn't meant for just anyone. And I noticed she hadn't touched me like that in months. That's when the other pieces started clicking together. Her new lipstick, bold red, not her usual muted pink. The sudden yoga sessions every other night that ran 2 hours long. Her phone, always on silent now. The laptop that snapped shut when I entered the room. At first, I chalked it all up to her throwing herself into her career. I mean, I was proud of her. She'd worked hard to get to this new position. But watching her with him, it didn't feel like professional chemistry. It felt like something else. Something I wasn't invited to be part of. Maybe I was overthinking. That's what I told myself as I stood there, clutching a drink I didn't want and trying to quiet the storm building in my chest. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. The insecure guy who couldn't handle his wife's success. That wasn't me. So I smiled at people I didn't know. Made small talk with someone from IT. Even laughed a little when someone made a joke about the hors d'oeuvres being more decorative than edible. But the whole time my eyes kept drifting back to Betsy. Eventually, I made my way out into the hallway to breathe. Just a break. That's all I needed. There was a coffee station set up outside the conference rooms, so I grabbed a cup, trying to steady myself. And then I heard it. A whisper. Low and cautious. It was Betsy's voice, coming from behind the tall partition wall just past the coffee station. I froze, instinctively stepping back to listen. I couldn't see her, but I knew that voice like I knew my own. If he asks, she was saying, just tell him you're in the marketing department. Don't mention anything else. Silence followed. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't hear who she was talking to, but I didn't need to. The implication was enough. I stood there, rooted in place, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. Something shifted inside me at that moment. All the little doubts I'd been suppressing, brushing aside, they weren't just paranoia. They were puzzle pieces. And now I had the edge of the picture. I didn't go back inside. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I walked toward the service elevator at the far end of the corridor. As the doors closed behind me, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored wall. I looked calm. Normal. Like a guy just stepping out to make a phone call. But inside, I knew something had just changed and there was no going back. I didn't go back into the ballroom. Couldn't. My body wouldn't let me. Instead, I found a spot by the windows in the hallway, far enough from the music and the laughter, close enough to see the skyline but not be seen. My coffee sat untouched on the narrow windowsill. All I could do was stand there, watching the glass fog slightly under my breath, trying to convince myself I'd misheard. But I hadn't. If he asks, tell him you're in marketing. Not sales, not ops, not project management, marketing. The word sounded neutral, harmless. Like a safe little lie they'd rehearsed. I thought about going in there and demanding answers right then and there. But what would I even say? Hey, I overheard my wife whispering something shady behind a plant at a hotel coffee bar? No. I wasn't going to be that guy. Not yet. I didn't have enough. So I waited. I waited until I heard her voice again, back inside the main room, bright and social and completely at odds with the whisper I just heard. I walked down a side corridor and took a service elevator to another floor just to avoid passing them. And when I finally came back up 15 minutes later, I kept my distance. Betsy saw me from across the room and gave a quick little wave, like she just remembered I existed. Then she went right back to her conversation. With him. I watched her from the buffet line, pretending to be interested in mini sliders. She leaned in close to Sean again, her hand grazing his sleeve as she laughed. God, that laugh. It wasn't just work social. It was familiar. Playful. Like there was a running joke between them. I could see it in the way they looked at each other, how their eyes lingered a half-second too long. That's when I noticed something else. She'd changed her phone background. It was no longer the picture of us from last summer in Asheville, the one she used to say was her favorite. Now it was something abstract, geometric, sterile. I only saw it for a second when she pulled her phone from her purse to check a message, but it hit harder than I expected. You don't swap out something like that unless you're trying to forget what came before. I couldn't help but start doing the math in my head, the new lipstick I hadn't seen until 2 weeks ago. The uptick in yoga nights that conveniently aligned with her boss's extended hours. The subtle way she'd stopped asking me if I wanted to grab dinner together on Fridays. All of it scattered across weeks and months like breadcrumb trails I'd refused to follow. It was all there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I watched Sean excuse himself and head toward the restrooms. Betsy followed shortly after, but not in a direct line. She veered off, pretending to talk to someone at the drinks table before slipping through a door marked private event storage. I stared at the door for a long time, trying to rationalize. Maybe she needed to make a call. Maybe she's helping with logistics. Maybe No. Stop. You don't need to play lawyer for someone who stopped treating you like a husband. I left the room again. This time I ended up near a dim hallway that connected to the back end of the hotel's conference center. There was a row of vending machines and a single couch that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since 2012. I sat down. My heart was thudding, and it wasn't from climbing stairs. I wanted to call someone. My brother, maybe? Or Eric. But how do you explain something like this over the phone without sounding like a conspiracy theorist? She's acting weird. How weird? Like maybe cheating weird. I could already hear the silence on the other end of that call. And honestly, I didn't want confirmation from anyone else just yet. I wasn't ready to turn suspicion into reality. I ended up scrolling through old photos of us on my phone instead. There we were on our anniversary eating bad sushi and laughing about it. There we were at her sister's baby shower. And again at the lake house we rented last fall, wrapped in a blanket, her head on my shoulder. She looked at me differently then, like I was still home. But tonight, I was an accessory. A prop. Something she brought to the party to check a box. Eventually, I made my way back to the ballroom just to keep up appearances. I didn't go near her. Just mingled quietly, had a drink, and told a guy from the San Antonio branch that I was in IT consulting even though I'm not. He didn't ask any follow-ups. At one point, Betsy walked by on her way to the terrace. She didn't notice me too focused on her phone. Her expression was blank, then briefly annoyed. She typed something quickly and slipped outside. 30 seconds later, Sean followed. And that's when I knew. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. Not just the weird feeling in my chest or the rehearsed explanations or the suddenly private yoga sessions. No, this was choreography. A routine. They'd done this before. I waited a minute, then walked toward the terrace doors like I was just stepping out for air. I didn't go all the way outside, just stood behind the curtain, peeking through the gap. They were standing close. Too close. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but her body language said everything. She was smiling, eyes soft, posture relaxed in a way she never was with me anymore. She touched his wrist. He leaned down and said something that made her laugh again, that same damn laugh. I stepped back before they saw me. My throat was tight, my fists clenched so hard my nails pressed into my palm. I walked to the elevator and hit the lobby button without thinking. I didn't go home. I sat in the hotel lobby with another coffee I didn't drink and stared at the floor, wondering how long I'd been blind. Wondering if she'd always been this good at lying or if I'd just stopped looking for the truth. When she came downstairs later, she texted me, heading home soon. Are you still here? I didn't answer. I waited until I saw her pass through the lobby, heels clicking, face unreadable, before I stood up and headed in the opposite direction. The ride home was quiet. She was scrolling through her phone again, responding to some group chat, apparently. I stared out the window, pretending to be tired. She made small talk about how amazing Linda's vision was for the department and how engaging the presentation had been. I nodded. Smiled. Didn't say much. But inside, something had cracked. The version of her that came home with me that night wasn't my wife. Not really. She was someone else now, someone with secrets. Someone who knew how to laugh too easily and lie too smoothly. And me? I was starting to realize I'd been living in a facade. One that looked like marriage from the outside but was hollow inside. It's funny. People talk about betrayal like it's this explosion, loud, messy, impossible to ignore. But for me, it was quiet. A slow rot. 1,000 tiny omissions that added up to a truth I hadn't wanted to face. Until now. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there beside Betsy, eyes open in the dark, listening to the shallow rhythm of her breathing. She slept like someone who didn't have a single lie to carry, arms tucked under her cheek, lips slightly parted, peaceful in a way that made my stomach turn. I used to love watching her sleep. There was something grounding in it, like no matter what the world threw at us, this was where we returned together, safe. But now all I could think about was the look in her eyes when she smiled at him. That soft, electric gaze she used to give me. She didn't even flinch when I got out of bed and went downstairs. I sat in the kitchen with a glass of water I never drank. The house felt foreign, like I was suddenly living in someone else's life. The framed photos on the wall, the little post-it note on the fridge with her favorite smoothie recipe, the faint scent of her perfume still hanging on her coat by the door, it all felt curated. Set dressing for a marriage that had quietly slipped into fiction. The next morning, she acted like everything was normal. Made coffee. Asked if I wanted toast. Even kissed me on the cheek before heading off to work. Yoga bag slung over one shoulder, same lipstick from the night before. That detail stuck with me for some reason. When the door closed behind her, I stood in the foyer, surrounded by silence, and finally said it out loud, "She's lying." The words didn't make me feel better. But they were true. And once you say something like that, you can't unsay it. You can't put it back in the bottle and pretend you didn't hear your own voice echo it into your living room. That's when I started watching. Not obsessively. Not like a man spiraling. At least, that's what I told myself. I didn't follow her car or go full conspiracy mode. But I noticed things. Her gym bag stayed in the trunk now, never actually made it into the house. She started wearing that silver suit more often, said it made her feel confident. Her laptop, once always open, lived zipped shut in her bag. I'd walk into the room and she'd press her phone against her chest like it had suddenly turned radioactive. It wasn't one thing. It was the way the pieces started forming a pattern I couldn't ignore. Then came Thursday night. She was staying late for a planning session. Texted me around 6 to say they were running behind. I replied, "No problem. Be safe." She didn't answer. Around 8, I decided to drive. Not to her office, somewhere else. I didn't even know where I was going until I found myself turning onto the frontage road just past the highway. The same one that led to that Skyline hotel. I didn't mean to go there. But something pulled me, like my brain had quietly decided it was time to stop wondering and start knowing. The hotel looked different at night. Quieter. Less polished. I parked across the street and sat in my car for a while, watching the entrance. The same doorman from the event was still there, now leaning against the wall and scrolling his phone. Nothing happened for a while. And then, just as I was about to leave, I saw her. She stepped out of the elevator into the lobby, talking on her phone. Still in heels. Still in that same silver suit. Her expression wasn't tired or stressed from a long meeting. She looked satisfied. Relaxed. Sean was a few steps behind her. They didn't touch. Didn't hug. Nothing incriminating. Just two coworkers leaving at the same time. But her smile? That same damn smile I saw on the terrace. I ducked down instinctively, like I was the one doing something wrong. My hands were shaking. Not out of fear, out of clarity. That was the moment. The tipping point. When doubt stopped being doubt and became something else, understanding. I didn't follow them. Didn't need to. I knew what I'd seen, even if I couldn't prove anything yet. When she got home an hour later, she dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and called out, "Hey babe, that meeting ran way over, ugh." Like nothing had happened. Like her voice hadn't just said, "If he asks, tell him you're in marketing." I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I smiled. Asked if she wanted tea. Played the part. And while she scrolled Instagram on the couch, I opened a new folder on my laptop and titled it, "Just in Case." The next few days blurred. I watched. Waited. Logged details I never thought I'd have to pay attention to. The gym visits that didn't show up on her fitness app. The calls she took in the garage. The dinners she forgot we had planned. I took *TS of her calendar when she left it open. I noted the time she left and the time she got back. I wasn't looking to trap her. I just wanted the truth to stop slipping through my fingers. Then came the final straw. Saturday night. She said she was going to meet up with an old friend from college. Girls' night, she called it, like we were still in our 20s. I didn't even argue. Just nodded. Told her to have fun. She wore perfume. Not just a spritz drenched in it. The same one she wore the night of the corporate event. After she left, I waited 15 minutes, then checked her location from our shared family tracking app, something we'd both enabled years ago for safety. She wasn't at the bar she said she'd be. She was 3 miles away at a restaurant we'd been to only once on our anniversary. I didn't go there. I didn't need to see it. Seeing it wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I sat on the couch with the TV on mute, staring at the front door, waiting for the moment she'd walk through like nothing had changed. She came home just after midnight. Hair tousled, cheeks flushed, smiling like she'd had a great time. Drinks turned into dinner. Then dessert. You know how it goes. I nodded. Smiled. Said, "Glad you had fun." She kissed me on the forehead and headed to bed, humming some song I didn't recognize. And that night, as I sat alone in the quiet, the truth settled in with terrifying finality. This wasn't a theory anymore. This wasn't suspicion or insecurity or paranoia. This was real. I just hadn't decided what to do about it yet. The thing about knowing is it doesn't bring peace. It just makes the silence louder. After that night, I stopped waiting for an apology. Stopped hoping for the slip-up that would force her to admit it. I had my answer. What I didn't have was a plan. So I did the only thing that made sense. I watched. I listened. I gathered. And she? She acted like everything was fine. She'd come home from meetings with a lightness in her step, not a trace of guilt in her voice. She was careful now. Intentional. No more perfume overload, no more coming back with windswept hair or mascara slightly smudged. She was calculated. Clean. It almost would have worked if I hadn't already seen behind the curtain. I started documenting things. Quietly. Her second phone, the one she thought I didn't notice, stuffed in her gym bag. A burner, probably, though I wasn't sure if it was for Sean or for keeping the timelines clean. *TS of her texts when she left her laptop open. Photos of parking receipts. Call logs. I wasn't building a case, I was building certainty. For myself. One night, I waited until she was asleep and opened her laptop again. She'd cleared her browser history this time, but the open tabs told their own story. A fitness blog that redirected to a Gmail login. A private Google Drive account not linked to her work email. I clicked through until I hit the permissions wall. Password protected. Of course it was. Still, I took photos. Documented everything. And then I did something I wasn't proud of. I took her phone. Not for long. Just long enough to see that she'd turned off her iCloud backups and was using Signal for most of her messages now. Private, encrypted. Smart. It was all smart. Which made what happened next so much worse. I decided to talk to her. Not accuse talk. I picked a Tuesday evening when I knew she wasn't scheduled for any late meetings. I made dinner. Set the table. Kept the mood light. She came home a little surprised to see everything laid out. I poured her a glass of wine and we talked about nothing for a while. Work. Weather. A coworker she didn't like. Then I asked her, "Bets, is there anything you want to tell me?" Her eyes narrowed just slightly. About what? I don't know. You've been distant lately. I just want to know if everything's okay between us. She smiled. A small, patronizing thing. Of course it's okay. Why wouldn't it be? I stared at her. Let the silence do the asking for me. She put her wine down, leaned back, and tilted her head. Are you trying to accuse me of something? I'm trying to talk to you. Right, she said, her voice sharp now. Talk. Like you're suddenly so interested in my life. That stung. Because it was true, at least a little. I'd pulled back lately. But only because I've been watching her pull away for months. You've been hiding things, I said quietly. I've seen it. Like what? She asked, folding her arms. My calendar? My texts? You've been spying on me, haven't you? The way she said it like she'd caught me doing something wrong. I'm trying to understand what happened to us, I said. I've been honest with you. I'm asking for the same. She laughed. A bitter, short sound. You don't like that I'm finally doing something with my career. That I'm not home at 5 every day making you dinner. You want the old version of me, quiet, supportive, small. I stood there stunned. Small? I repeated. Is that what I made you feel like? She didn't answer. Instead, she said something I'll never forget. If you start trying to ruin my reputation, she said, calmly, coldly, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. What kind of man is that? The jealous, controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. My jaw tightened. So that's the story now? It's the truth people will believe, she said. You think Sean's going to admit anything? You think anyone will side with you over me? And just like that, it wasn't about marriage anymore. It wasn't about honesty. It was a chess game. And she'd moved her queen. From that night on, the house felt different. We didn't fight. We didn't even talk about it again. But every interaction was laced with subtext. Politeness became a we**p***n. Kindness became cover. She'd smile as she handed me coffee and I'd wonder what conversation she was deleting in the next room. She'd ask about my work and I'd wonder if she was timing how long I'd be out of the house. We weren't partners anymore. We were opponents playing under the same roof. And the worst part? She was better at it than I was. The next few days, I started keeping a journal, not for feelings, but for facts. Dates, times, names. I was tired of being gaslit. Tired of being made to feel crazy for seeing the obvious. I stopped bringing things up. Stopped engaging in the emotional war she wanted to pull me into. And that's when her tone changed again. She'd try tenderness now. Reach for my hand while we watched TV. Kiss my shoulder when she walked by. Call me by the pet name she hadn't used in months. But it wasn't real. It was strategy. The same way silence had been. And beneath it all, the truth throbbed like a cracked tooth. She wasn't going to admit anything. She wasn't going to apologize. Not unless she had no other choice. And I was done waiting for that. A few days after our last conversation, if you can call it that, Betsy posted a photo from the Houston event. It popped up on my feed around 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, the kind of time she usually reserved for strategic professional updates. The caption was harmless at first glance. Grateful to be surrounded by brilliant minds. One step closer to the future I've worked for. Smiling face emoji. Hashtag women in leadership. In the photo, she stood between Linda and Sean. The same silver suit. Same precise hair. Same smile that made people think she had it all figured out. Champagne in hand, looking relaxed, vibrant. If you looked closely, though, just over her left shoulder, you could see me. Slightly blurred. Partially cropped. Standing alone near the buffet table with a neutral expression that didn't match the tone of the party. I looked like an afterthought. Like a detail she forgot to edit out. That post got over 200 likes in the first hour. Comments rolled in fast. K***ling it bets. Power trio. Love to see it. You deserve it all, girl. Don't let anyone slow you down. I didn't like the photo. Didn't comment. But I read every word. I scrolled down until I saw someone from her old job, someone we used to have over for dinner, who commented. So proud of how far you've come. I know it hasn't been easy. What does that even mean? By lunch, she'd added more photos to a carousel. One of her shaking hands with a VP. Another mid-laugh with Linda and Sean. One more, slightly blurry, of her giving a short speech at the mic with a caption that read, "Not just showing up, taking up space." I wasn't in any of those. She never tagged me. Never mentioned I was even there. That night, I asked her about it. "So, nice photos." She smiled like nothing was wrong. "Yeah, it was such a good night. You didn't post the one of us." She sipped her tea. "There weren't really any good ones of us." "Right," I said. "But there were plenty of Sean." She gave a little shrug. "It's a work event. He's part of my team." "Why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird," I said. "I'm just noticing." "You always notice the wrong things," she said quietly, not even looking at me. And just like that, the conversation ended. The next day, a colleague of mine, someone from our friend circle, texted me out of the blue. "Hey, is everything okay with you and Bets?" Saw her post. She looked different. You weren't tagged, so I wasn't sure if it was, like, a thing. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't respond. But that was the moment I realized the world she was curating, the narrative she was building, it didn't include me anymore. Soon, mutual friends stopped asking how she was. They stopped asking how we were. A few of them even started distancing themselves from me, like whatever was happening between us might be contagious. She started going out more. Not just late nights, but midday coffees, weekend strategy sessions, informal brunches with women I'd never heard of but who always commented things like, "This woman is unstoppable fire," under her posts. At a dinner with some mutual acquaintances, someone said something that stuck with me. "Betsy's really evolving. It's inspiring." I mean, not everyone can hold a marriage together when they're growing that fast. I didn't correct them. Didn't defend myself. I just smiled, nodded, and cut my steak while my throat burned. But it clicked. She had been planting seeds for weeks. Months, probably. Quiet hints dropped in passing. Fragments of complaints packaged as empowerment. She was crafting a version of herself where I was the obstacle. The outdated fixture. The man who couldn't keep up. And the worst part? It was working. People were falling for it. People I thought knew us. The house became quieter. Colder. She started staying in the guest room because of early morning calls. I stopped asking where she was going when she left with a suitcase on a Sunday night. I knew what she'd say. I just didn't care to hear the lie rehearsed again. One night, I heard her on the phone through the wall. "I just need to hold it together a little longer," she said, voice low. "He's not making it easy, but I'm handling it. I have to." There was a pause. A small laugh. "No, he doesn't know. Not the whole story." I didn't hear the rest. Didn't want to. The truth had become a background hum in my life. Always present. Always vibrating beneath every conversation. Every breakfast. Every moment of eye contact that lasted too long or not long enough. We weren't a couple anymore. We were two brands quietly negotiating their separation. She lived in her curated version of reality. Polished. Performative. Empowered. And I was the ghost in the background. Cropped out of the photos. Silent. Erased in real time. But not forgotten. Not by me. And not for long. I knew I couldn't rely on confrontation. She'd already shown she'd spin it into control or victimhood. So I pivoted. Quietly, carefully, I started collecting. I took photos of her second phone. **TS of strange calendar invites. **TS of texts she left open by mistake. I backed it all up in a hidden cloud folder titled innocuously. Something she wouldn't notice. Each piece felt like a betrayal twice, hers for doing it, mine for confirming it. But I had to. I couldn't live under accusation and denial anymore. I needed truth I could hold. Then something unexpected happened. Eric, one of Betsy's former internship buddies, reached out. He'd been at the Houston event and recorded a conversation by accident, thinking he was catching sound bites for a project. But what he caught was Betsy. Her voice, unmistakable. "Just don't let it trace back to me. He thinks it's all work dinners. Keep it that way." She was talking to Sean. That was all I needed. I sent the audio to my lawyer that night. The response was quick, sharp, and validating. "This changes everything.